Hey, it's Jamie, the Urban Wine Buff, and welcome to Alphabetically Wine. Today's letter is the letter W, and W is for wine label basics. Okay, so wine labels can be a bit tricky to read. There's a lot of information provided on them, so I just want to give you the 5 basic things that you want to pay attention to when reading a wine label. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to pay attention to is the name of the wine. So wine can be named by 3 different ways. It can be named by the grape varietal, so that means you might see a wine bottle with Chardonnay across the front, or Pinot Noir, or Zinfandel, or Pinot Grigio, whatever. The name of the grape itself can be the name of the wine. Some wines are also named by the region that it comes from instead. So this is typical of wines that are from Europe, the European countries. Those are also known as Old World wines. So a lot of times with the Old World wines, they name their wines after the actual region that it's grown and produced in. So instead of the actual grape, you might see Rioja or Chianti or Burgundy on the front of the wine bottle, label, and you're just expected to know what that is. For instance, Burgundy, for a white Burgundy is always Chardonnay grapes. For red Burgundy is always Pinot Noir. That won't automatically be on the label itself, but the fact that Burgundy is on there and the fact that it's red or white is supposed to be an indicator of what's in the bottle. The third way that wines are named are just generic names, just a made-up name that don't have anything to do with anything. So for instance, I had a wine a couple months ago called Kaleidoscope. It was a California red blend, and that's all it said on the label. Kaleidoscope was the name of the wine, and that's it. So those are the 3 ways that wine can be named. So that is one thing you want to pay attention to when reading a wine label. Next, you want to find out where it comes from. So that is the region, okay? So it might say California on it, or Burgundy, or Italy, or Washington, or whatever. It's a location, and that's usually on the front label as well. The more specific it is within the region indicates the higher quality. So instead of it just saying Burgundy, it can say Chablis. Okay, so Chablis is like a sub-region or an appellation of Burgundy. So it just indicates that all of the wine grapes come from that smaller vicinity within the region. So that is called the region or the appellation, and that is always on the wine label as well. Another thing you want to pay attention to is the vintage. So the vintage is the year that the grapes were picked, and that is indicated on the wine label as well, if it is a vintage. So whenever you see a vintage, like a year on it, like it might say 2015, that means that all or most, depending on the laws of each country, of those grapes come from that specific year. Okay, and then you have some wines that are a blend of grapes from different years. So those are called non-vintage wines. So you won't see a vintage on there. So that's something to pay attention to as well when you're looking at the wine label. Another thing you want to pay attention to is the producer. The producer is just the vineyard or the winemaker, whoever produced or made the wine. Their names are also on the wine label. For instance, the one that I have in front of me, this is pretty simple. It's really straightforward. This is the MCBRIDE Sisters collection. So the MCBRIDE Sisters is the producer, right? That's who made this wine. So it's clear as day. And yeah, that's what it is. And last but certainly not least, you want to pay attention to the alcohol content of the wine. That's important to a lot of people because they want to know if this wine has a lot of alcohol or not. So that's usually on the front, but sometimes it can be on the back label as well. Just a tip, I think I said this before, the lower the alcohol content, the sweeter the wine is typically going to be. That just has everything to do with the fermentation process, because fermentation will stop before all that sugar can turn into alcohol. So if you have like a wine that's less than 10% alcohol, that's a sweet wine. If you have something that's up to like 13%, that's kind of like off dry, so it has some sweetness. Anything above that is going to be dry. So that is something that you can gauge just by looking at the label. The exception to that is if you're dealing with fortified wine. So you have some port wines that are like 20%, but they are made like totally different than the regular wine. So their taste and their characteristics are different, okay? A few other things that you may see on a wine label that are not in the top 5 are just like things like the indicators of sweetness. So like for instance, in German wines, they have like a whole hierarchy of how they classify the sweetness of their wines. So if you see something like Auslese or Spotlese on it, that means that the wine may be sweet. In other regions, they have indicators of quality. So like when I was talking about Rioja, on my Rioja video, I was talking about the Crianza versus the Reserva and things like that. Those indicate quality. So, but each country has their own like quality levels. So that's too much to get into here. But just know that that is something else that you may see on a wine label. So go ahead and let me know what you think about this. What kind of wine do you have today? Is it named by the region or by the grape, or what have you seen? Let me know if you've learned anything. And yeah, just go ahead and leave your comments below, and go ahead and like, share, follow, subscribe, all of that. And meet me at the next video. Let's go.